Hey everybody, so we're gonna get an opportunity to peek behind the curtain of CrowdStrike's blueprint for RevOps success. Hey everybody, my name's Kevin Hydorn. I'm a senior cloud go-to-market coach here at Tackle, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Christian Noel from CrowdStrike. If you're in revenue or in RevOps and you're wondering how to actually make cloud go-to-market work at scale, and not just like list and actually like hope for the best, this session is absolutely for you. Christian's been leading the charge at CrowdStrike for the last 4 years, and the story is an absolute masterclass in building operational muscle to support marketplace and co-sell at global scale. So everybody, let's dive in together. So Christian, let's kick this off here and rewind for just a second.
Mhm.
Your journey into the clouds didn't start at RevOps. You've been on the reseller side, you've been deep in the weeds with manual processes, but can you talk a bit about how that shaped your mindset when you first got to CrowdStrike?
Yeah, I can dig into a little bit of my background. And to start, it was as a reseller, but it was mostly doing licensing. And at the time, it wasn't the kind of licensing we're used to now, where it's mostly digital. We were still handling paperwork. We were, trying to make sure everything was compiled and archived correctly. So there are a few steps in that where we knew we could make it a little bit more efficient. From my point of view, building efficiencies, finding efficiencies, that's always my daily goal. Going from being paper documents to what in turn turned into a account management role. A little bit more technical, but still in the weeds of paperwork. We were learning how going from documentation through paperwork to digital documentation became such an important task, and how not just archiving, but also reporting and being able to translate that information to other teams became a much easier task because we have it available to share over email or just, post it in a shared file folder, whatever is needed. The journey from the manual processes all the way to automation, I wouldn't even say was separate of my cloud journey, though. Going from doing the licensing to the cloud account management was one thing, but then we also ended up opening up a new role on the systems engineer team, which was more of a technical role based in cloud. So looking at it from okay, we're doing licensing, we're just documenting, what somebody's purchasing, what licenses they own and how they're using it, to now they've purchased those licenses. How do they roll them out in their production environment? What's the most efficient use of this? These became things you see not just for onboarding, but for day-to-day tasks, repetition. You're wasting time if you're sitting here starting from scratch every time you do something. So why don't you start documenting and say, which piece of this puzzle can we knock out? Make it a standardized workflow, or just see if there's a script, a template, something we can provide to make sure that the onboarding experience all the way through from purchasing licensing to provisioning your licensing is just seamless. Um, I will say that's kind of how I transitioned even into a technical role, was going from knowing that I have the administrative experience of licensing to the cloud account management, which was more along the financial tech side of licensing and right sizing, to then going to the technical side of the house, where now we're deep in the woods. You kind of need to know from A to Z in order to do it efficiently. Building out scripts, that was one way we made sure onboarding was smooth and successful. Uh, Templates, of course, in the cloud. This was back when my previous experience as a systems engineer was in the cloud. I don't currently work with, but that, the same skill set really translates across the board. So it was really just taking a look at how do we make sure there is as many efficiencies possible, and if it can be automated, automate it. If not, make sure it's documented and you can teach the next person. You can't just keep running every single day. At some point, you need to make sure that the functions are useful and that they can translate for somebody else's use case as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, thank you so much for sharing, Christian. And so let's jump into when you arrived at CrowdStrike.
Mhm.
What did the cloud GTM motion really look like at the onset? What were kind of the first few moves you made to really formalize a program and get RevOps aligned?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. So I'm not gonna say we, revolutionized this whole practice or anything. It was ongoing at CrowdStrike before I arrived. Less formal of a team, and then when we came on board to build out the team, it was personally a task for me to say, okay, I'm no longer at a reseller. What do they do differently here? I had a teammate who was an internal hire, so I was like, my first 30 days, let's pick his brain, see what he knows that I don't know, see how he can help me and how I can help him. Coming into Crowd, I also had the cloud experience that some other people in my team didn't necessarily have for as long or as deep. So I was trying to say, what skills can I pass on to them and make sure that, we work together here in not just finding efficiencies, but also trying to get to that goal of automation. Building it out from what they previously had, we were using PDFs back in the day to do private offers. We're well beyond that now, but it's still an evolution, the entire process. So what we did was move from not just them having an informal team who handles private offers, but create a formal team who handles private offers, but also is going to lead the conversation around cloud. Having the experience might be one thing, but you need to also be able to talk to those cross-functional teams, and knowing that they may not have cloud experience, build out some enablement for them. Ask them what do they need help with, what would they like help with. That's where I came in and just said, who can I talk to? I know I'm new. I know they might not know me when I reach out, but like, how can you get me in front of the right people so that I can start asking the questions that I don't think have been asked yet? And let's start tearing it apart. Let's figure out how we can make this whole thing better. That first 30 days at the company, I can say I learned a lot, but it was really just trying to get my head around the scope of my role in general. It's one thing to be told what the job description is. It's another thing to find out where you can help. And being in a supportive role, that's kind of what I've always been doing. Like, let's stress test it. Let's break some systems and then we'll make it better. It's not just to say, oh, we broke it. It's like, no, I want to find out where we can fix things, make them better, and make them more efficient for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely, Christian. I've now worked with you for quite some time. You definitely in some companies do tiptoe into marketplace. You jumped right in head first, and so definitely an example of your first 30 days at CrowdStrike, and then also too, I know and we discussed previously kind of first 30 days, but then like what was like the next following months, like the 60 and 90 too as well. Like I know you jumped right into it, but something to definitely highlight for RevOps and kind of that first quarter that you were there at CrowdStrike.
Yeah, the first quarter, I mean, I already knew what my goal was. It's always going to be automation or as close to automation as you can get it. So the first 30 days, I was meeting all the people, just trying to introduce myself, letting them know my background. I'd say that second 30 days, that 60 days in, I was seeing what tools I'm not familiar with. Of course, we all have experience. We all use different tools and systems in the past, but transitioning to another company, what am I not familiar with and how can I get up to speed as quick as possible? That's where I was kind of just in the weeds, just, trying to figure out how to use these tools myself, but also reaching out to those people I connected with in the first 30 days, saying, now I have a network. They can guide me on different things, but they're also more open to it because I've already reached out. I've built that relationship with them and said, I'm here to help you. So, if we just help each other, we'll both be good here. But until I get my feet up under me, I can't really help just yet. That 60 days was kind of just getting familiar with tools, reporting, seeing what I might be able to do, and then kind of transitioning that into that 90-day mark where I'm good. I'm off to the races. I know what I'm doing here. Of course, there's going to be questions asked, but I don't necessarily need someone right there with me. I know my job, I know how to do it, and I know who to work with in order to make their day easier and a little bit more efficient. That's where I always try and make sure that they understand that I'm here to support. We do have a job, but I want to make sure that I'm supporting each and every team that I work cross-functionally with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'd love to move on to scaling co-sell, and also I know we talk about this quite often, Christian, is reducing human error. And so from those initial point in your journey at CrowdStrike, you've grown from this like little two-person team, like I said, your first 30, 60, 90 to this 12-person engine, as we love to call it. And co-sell volume really went from like the 200 million to up to like 400 plus million, and that was all something that you'd experienced when you started at CrowdStrike. So, what did you have to solve internally to make that work, to really get that engine going and focus on automation?
Yeah, it's really came down to conversations. We found that there were conversations that weren't happening that probably needed to happen to see, what are these hyperscalers doing that we are not necessarily helping them with in the most efficient way. And why isn't that conversation happening? So getting in front of the people at the hyperscalers, getting in front of the tackles and any of our other partners and saying, what are you guys doing? And are we doing it the best way? Is there another way we should look at? And then again, going back to the conversation, once people sit down and you realize like we're just all here trying to help, that's where you get the most out of these meetings. We start coming up with the plans and projects to say, okay, we have two people right now. What can we do? All right. Well, now we start looking at the automation of it all and saying we can eliminate one or two tasks that frees up your time to move on to something else. Okay, those conversations need to happen though, or else you're kind of just shooting in the dark. You don't really know what you're aiming for until you get there. Um, I would say automation of tools is one thing, but you also have to communicate with those cross-functional teams who aren't aware of these, the needs of these hyperscalers sometimes. We have the teams who are closing deals and not just sales, but also like our deal desk teams who aren't familiar with cloud necessarily, but we can also help them, brush up a little bit on their cloud knowledge. Getting the certifications that we have, that's not always the easiest thing, and it is a taxing journey to say like, you're always up to date with certs, but not everyone needs their cert. You just need to give them the information that would benefit them in their role. And I say that as far as creating a template, creating a talk track, going into this saying, these questions come up often. How can we make sure that they're answered in the quickest way possible? And we can show the benefit and value of our team for not just sales, but for our partners and alliances.
Awesome. Yeah, and we know this publicly. CrowdStrike is a transactional machine, and you touched on it right there, Christian. The less human touch equals less human error, right? I did want to double click into one particular area, Christian, sharing kind of your story of scaling offers and just like the general internal coordination there. Love for you to be able to kind of touch on that because I'm sure this audience would love to hear that story too.
Yeah, as a two-man team, we were the scale was me and my teammate. We were global at the time, so everyone came across us at some point. Having to cover so many regions as such a small organization or such a small team, it was difficult at the time until we realized like scheduling meetings and making sure that you are always readily available when that, end of the month, end of quarter happens. That's one thing. But having a team who understands that region and can report back to you and can ask for feedback, but they're in there with that region sales reps, with their alliance managers. That's what it really comes down to. You mentioned that, we went from the two-person team to about 10 to 12 people, and that was at a necessity. You don't always have to grow a headcount in order to scale, but in that regional need, that was something that I found value in. Now I can have somebody who can be in the weeds with sellers and know that they're in the same time zone, and there's not really a delay from saying, "Hey, a private offer came in, but I was asleep at that time." You have to have some downtime, but regionally, we train them up. We know that they can keep this machine going, and if anything, can tell us what their region's problems are. So we're going from not just saying, we cover it globally. We still cover globally. We're still going to have escalation points, but I'm going to have my specialists who are in the region and, giving us the insight of what pain points are there, what limitations there might be, and how we currently navigate them so that I can build the tools or find the systems we need to make sure they're no longer a problem.
Awesome. That's a great story. So we're covering scaling co-sell and scaling your team. As we also know that CrowdStrike is multi-cloud, and there's a strategy around that and customizations that's going to be required to see success at that scale. You're currently CrowdStrike is running across AWS and GCP. How have you balanced the customization requirements and your automation goals, and also field enablement across both AWS and GCP at your time at CrowdStrike?
Yeah, we have some amazing teams internally and our partners. I've always let you know, Tackles is our trusted source when we're trying to make sure that if there isn't parity in a feature in the hyperscalers, how can we get as close to parity or use a simple tool that will allow us to scale without it being too much enablement necessary? I find value in Tackle because that's where we go. If I don't have to train every individual team on how one cloud provider works over the other, I can just show them, hey, we actually have this tool we use called Tackle, and Tackle has streamlined a majority of our processes to the point where you don't really even need to know how much one cloud versus the other is able to, perform. You kind of just need to understand the workflow. And once that's documented and trained to these teams, that enablement is easy. I can go to one tool and say, these are the sections that each team needs. Let's get a talk track, or let's get some enablement material together for each individual party. Co-sell, private offers, revenue rec, finance, collections, they all have their own need, but they all don't necessarily need to go into a cloud to do that. They just need the visibility and the understanding to do their job. That's where I come in and I'll say, hey, this is what you may need. This is what we can do to set up a call that's documented and make sure that if it's not a cadence, that we at least keep them updated on new features and what they might best see fit. That was the main thing that I'll say helped me with going into a Tackle, is knowing that the cloud providers, that's my job to keep updated with the cloud providers. I don't want to push that onto any other team because it's not their job to stay updated with cloud. I just want to make sure that when the cloud comes into the conversation, they know that there's a value and a benefit to going that route.
Right. And let's get real here, Kristen. Multi-cloud isn't just about simple coverage, right? It's not just about coverage here, coverage there. It's about agility. And I know that you've worked tirelessly at CrowdStrike to be able to be agile across the different clouds, but then also to the individual teams. I did want to double click into RevOps leaders out here because that's primarily the audience. What advice would you give RevOps leaders looking to go multi-marketplace, right? Shifting, maybe going from AWS into GCP or Azure too as well. Like what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, find out your limitations first. Some of the things that you start noticing is you might have internal limitations before the cloud provider's limitations come into play. That's one thing to have a system that's been running for a decade plus, where we can go to the cloud providers and they can give us insights on the pain points that they've seen. When you're rolling out a new process, you don't necessarily know what won't work for you. It's one thing to document what your need, but how do you get to the point where you say, like, okay, I'm trying to close a deal. What's the fastest way where I can also verify that it's accurate for any audit purposes, any training purposes? How do I make sure that this is the most efficient way to do things without getting in my own way? A lot of it comes down to you haven't told the right people why you're doing this. Have that conversation with the teams before they're being forced to interact with cloud, or before they're, being forced to learn a new process. Say, this is where other people have found value. This is where I'm noticing we can find value. Streamline booking of deals, that's where we have tools for that now. We don't necessarily have to do everything manually. Reviews and things, and with any automation that they may have or have available to them, that might be beneficial. I look at it as this is one way to speed up the close of a deal. When it really comes down to it, we know that our cloud and our cloud practice can, we can close that deal within the hour if we really need to. There's nothing preventing us and, from us, I mean, our teams creating and booking the deal, as long as the front end is taken care of. So make sure that you know what front end needs to have readily available or finalized before it reaches your team, and your process will be a lot smoother. You don't have to worry about taking a look back and saying, oh, we missed that. Oh, someone in sales or someone in this other team missed a step. It's like, no, it shouldn't even come over to you until it's ready to move forward, and then you can push things straight through.
Yeah, that's great advice, Christian. And also to a point, coming up with about deals closing end of quarter, or around urgency too as well. As we know, one of the benefits in teaming up with Tackle is, we are aligned pretty closely to the hyperscalers, and so if things do need to get escalated, we do have Google's and AWS ear to ensure that we can escalate things as needed too. So definitely having the right partners helps there. But that's absolutely fantastic advice, Christian. And so I would like to look ahead here, mostly around Salesforce integrations, then some other fun things that are coming up next. Without spoiling too much, we've got here at Tackle some exciting new capabilities launching, particularly around and with Salesforce and GCP and their APIs. So from your point of view, Christian, like what are you most excited about to see unlocked here in kind of the near future and in long term?
Yeah, you already touched on it too. I mean, you having Google and you having any of the cloud providers ear, that is so beneficial because I can't tell you how often we might have a problem, but we may not understand to what scope the industry has that problem. Or if it's not something that the industry has even touched on yet, we could have found something that's new or been in a pilot program or something where we want to get in front of it. We want to test it out. We want to make sure that it's useful to us. Tackle comes in and you guys can also have that voice of reason to when we go to have those discussions. Looking forward, the APIs, I mean, come on, that's amazing. I really have, that's one of the things I've been waiting for, not just for the automation piece of it, but you understand that in order to have parity between the clouds, that's something that was missing. And getting that allows us to kind of build on what we've already put in place from other cloud providers, but make sure that we only have to integrate it with Tackle. We already know how that system works and we can already build it out with you guys, product team, and making sure that the dynamic updates happen. Well, it'll be a quicker process than going back to custom workflows and making sure there's SOWs when a new feature comes out or getting to the party late. And that's what we really want to stay away from is getting to the party late for no fault of our own, but we may have heard about something late. Having Tackle in there at first or working directly with the cloud providers, we can test features, yes, but we can also know where we might find value outside of what we were thinking the use case was for. I know like P2B, that's something that everybody finds value in. That's one great feature that we definitely want to utilize to the fullest extent. But APIs and anything we can build automation around, any system integrations, any custom mapping like you guys rolled out, like those are what we really need. That just saves us from having to wait for cloud providers and hyperscalers to roll it out to where we can kind of have a little bit more customization on our own, get into there in the fly and just say, this is what works for us. We don't need to wait for it to work for the entire industry to be rolled out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we said this before previously in our conversation, but we talk about painting the art of the possible here at Tackle, but it's as important as the present reality too, and some of those limitations, right? So with the hyperscalers and what we can do with the current state of the APIs, and also future releases like with the GCP APIs upcoming soon too as well. So I also want to touch on we talked a bit about our exciting product updates, things a part of that we're announcing here at XP. But what's for you, Christian? What's something in CrowdStrike's future that you're really excited about, and something that you can share with the audience here?
I'm just deepening the partnership, honestly. We do use your tool, I'll say, to every day. At this point, we have no reason not to go to Tackle for support with private offers and co-sell, but we also know that that is just the current state of things. As you guys grow, we'll grow with you. And as the cloud progresses or evolves, we'll see things like DSOR or more work through distribution channels, more multi-partner deals that happen, and getting in front of those and saying, what does that look like in the future? Or having a voice so that we can kind of guide where that goes in the future. That's what we're looking forward to. Not just what features look like they're the best at the moment, but also being in the forefront of creating what the next feature might be, saying this is a pain point we have, or this is the pain point in the industry. Now let's help develop how the fix for it, or the new tool or new feature that's going to fix it. But I say getting in those pilot programs and those beta programs, working hand in hand with Tackle and all of the hyperscalers, that's what I'm looking forward to. I already know in my time in cloud, everything's changed and everything changes every few months. So it's kind of just like, well, what does the future hold? I know we'll be prepared for it, but that's what we're looking forward to is what the evolution of cloud and cloud transactions are.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. I know you've been at CrowdStrike for 4 years. Now I've actually been at Tackle for 4 years, and just between that period of time, so much has changed. So it's interesting to think about what's going to happen, like almost quarter to quarter, right? And so yeah, and would love to touch on some advice to the cloud GTM community here, and specifically for RevOps and revenue leaders, really just getting started. Do you have kind of like a one piece of advice we can kind of go back to, something that they can they can relate to that you can share here for this?
Make it as easy as possible for the teams you work with. I would say you are in the weeds of everything. If you can document what you do day to day, you can tell where there are pain points that others might not be aware of, and you can simplify it for them. Not just the documentation for your own job, but we were talking earlier about having talk tracks ready, having benefit and value points ready for the teams to either disperse or for you to say to them, but making sure that your message is consistent and that your goal is always in view. Not everybody is going to understand why you're using cloud, but they see that for their very small portion of that workflow that they need to interact with it. So help them. Like I was saying, we're the ones with the cloud experience. We're the ones who should be helping them understand why cloud, and we're also the ones who can enable them the best. So that's what I say is make sure you have that documentation first for your own role, but also start seeing how can I help these cross-functional teams, or just like you said, the revenue recognition, the RevOps teams, what do they need to focus on? And if it is more cloud experience, well, try and find out how you get them a very tailored cloud experience to where this is what you need to know. So it's not too confusing and doesn't derail them from their day job, but also sparks a little bit of interest in them to where they might say, what's this cloud thing? Let me look into it a little bit more. And now you have another person interested in cloud.
I like that. And I can attest too that Christian, you and the CrowdStrike team have fantastic internal documentation on their processes. So
Thank you.
it makes our life easy here to tackle. But I double clicking to for RevOps teams who might be hearing from their alliance leaders that cloud GTM, it is the way forward. But feelings are as we know sometimes a little could potentially be apprehensive. Why should cloud go to market matter for RevOps individuals?
Why shouldn't it matter? The cloud providers are always going to try and support that transition into the cloud space. And we see how quickly transactions can close when we do utilize a cloud, or the benefits of partnering with any of the cloud providers. We open up so many doors when we start looking at not just cloud direct sales, but cloud channel partner sales and then distribution. And it's just another way to make sure your customer gets what they want and can purchase the way that they'd like to. They have deals with the cloud providers. Why not leverage those? They might want to start new relationships with cloud providers. Why not help them with that? But you being available and open to not just going cloud, but all of the ways you can transact through cloud just gives you more of an opportunity to reach every customer possible.
Oh yeah. Uh, so I wanted to wrap up here, and I've covered a lot of fantastic topics, Christian. Do you have any kind of final words for the audience here at XP?
I would just say, hey, lean in the cloud. I know that this is going to be everybody's message is that we're sitting here saying cloud is the best, but honestly, that not just was a channel for me to go through to extend my learning and the capabilities as far as being technical, licensing, operational, but it's just a totally different environment working with cloud versus with on-prem or the teams that you interact with. So it opens up another door for the same type of careers you might be used to, but now you have a cloud focus on it. And as much as it sounds like, well, that how different is it? It's very different moving in the cloud. It's very different. And I've seen a lot of people transition into cloud just because it's new. It's always evolving and you're always going to stay on your toes. So whether it be from a technical standpoint, rev rec, rev ops standpoint, co-sell and sales, you still have so much more to learn and so much more to grow from by just leaning into cloud a little bit. There's so many different areas of cloud that you can learn, and you can always find that sweet spot that just works for you. You just have to dive in. Like you were saying, just jump right in. You have to.
Oh yeah. No, that's great advice. And Christian, this has been awesome. You're awesome. Love working with you. And I think what you shared today about automation and importance of team structure and how that impacts scaling, and always just your consistent transparency about the work that it takes to be successful, is exactly what this audience needed here for this session. So, and audience, if you're watching this and wondering if you can get to where CrowdStrike is at, just know it didn't happen by accident. It happened because of really intentional systems, processes, and leadership, like folks like Christian. And so, Christian, thank you again. Really appreciate your time.
No, thank you. Thank you.